On this week's episode, we have my good friend Megan Phillips joining us. She is a social media manager and mom of 3, and we are going to dive deep into her super unique journey into motherhood and how that kind of lends itself to her running her business. We're also going to talk about how to know when you're ready to hire a social media manager and some things you can do to set yourself up for success. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome to the Six Figure Brand Podcast, where each week we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a six-figure business as an online service provider. I'm your host, Morgan. I'm a branding expert, online agency owner, mom of 2, and military spouse, and I'm obsessed with helping entrepreneurs like you understand the ins and outs of branding so that you can use it to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. Whether you're just starting out or focused on scaling, we're diving into everything you need to build a profitable and sustainable online business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Six Figure Brand Society. I have my good friend and social media manager, Megan, with us today. Welcome, Megan. Why don't you give us a little background of kind of who you are and what your business is?
Hey, well, thank you so much for having me. First off, I wanted to say how much of a fan I am of your podcast and you and your business. I've been listening to every episode since you started it, so super honored to be on here. My business is social media management for service providers, and I've been in business since January 2021.
Okay, so you and I have worked together on 1 or 2 projects, and then you also were gracious enough to come give a training inside the Six Figure Brand Society last year, which was amazing. So I know a lot about your story and how you got into business, but I'm sure our listeners don't. So why don't you tell us how you got into this like crazy online business space?
Sure, I would love to. I feel like for me as a mom, a lot of the things in my life revolve around motherhood. So sorry if that doesn't relate. You can skip ahead, but I quit my corporate job in 2016 when my second child was born. And so we adopted our first in 2015, and then I got pregnant 3 months later. Then my second was born. And so we basically went from 0 to 2 in 12 months. And so it was like a lot. And before that, I never really considered being a stay-at-home mom because it wasn't something that I grew up with people around me that were stay-at-home moms. It really was never an idea that was in my head that would be realistic or anything that I even wanted to do because I've always worked since I was 15 and I'm such a hard worker and I tie my work to my productivity type of personality. So I've always needed something for me. And so I never really thought being a stay-at-home mom was in the cards for me. And then, I got pregnant and we were getting 2 kids in 1 year. And as you probably know, childcare is really expensive for 2 babies. And so my husband and I decided it just made sense for me to stay at home. We wanted one of us to, and it just made more sense for me to be the one at home with the kids. And so I did the stay at home mom thing for a while. And then in 2018, I started to get a little stir crazy because I was just at home by myself with my kids. And the only people that I had to talk to all day long were people who didn't talk yet. And so I need something for me again. And so I kind of dabbled into network marketing or direct sales or MLMs or whatever you want to call it. I sold Color Street nail strips for about 2.5 years. And so that was kind of my entrance into entrepreneurship. And it was so hard to grow that type of business. So if you've tried and failed, you're not alone. I was really good at selling the product and marketing myself, but I sucked at trying to grow a downline, which is really where you make money. And so I was pretty much not making anything. But I took what I learned from that business and what I liked from that business was all the marketing side of things. That's where I learned Canva. That's, anything about graphics and creating content and getting on video, getting comfortable doing live video and just being the face of my business and how to brand myself and not the company I partnered with. So I learned all that through that first business and then decided to go all in for myself in January 2021 is when I filed for my LLC and started out doing just virtual assisting to kind of figure out what I liked and what I didn't. And then, eventually about 6 months later, narrowed down to just social media and have been supporting primarily service-based businesses ever since with usually a social media management retainer, but I do other things like Instagram audits and consulting and things like that here and there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so much good stuff in there to dig into.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that like MLMs or direct sales or whatever you want to call them have such a bad reputation for very valid reasons.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone's listening that is in an MLM and you're like, why is this not working for me? First of all, it's not you. And second of all, consider, like Megan said, what other skills you've learned that you could translate into some other type of online business, because you are not the first person that I know about that's kind of like how you got into this space. But I feel like we don't talk about it a lot because you tell yourself the story in your head of like, my first business failed, rather than my first business was an amazing learning experience and it gave me the tools I needed to like launch this thing that is really truly my own and not like me running someone else's business.
Or, yeah, I was going to say another story. I don't know about you, but I tell myself, and I think other people probably would relate to this too, is not that it failed, but that like, oh, my first business wasn't a real business because it wasn't mine. Like, yes, you're a contractor. Like, it is yours. You're making money on your own, but it feels so much more like a side hustle than a legitimate business because, like you said, you didn't create the business. You're literally just marketing a proven product that already exists. But for me, it was such a great stepping stone because I was in a very busy phase of life with little babies. And then I had a third kid. So like all three kids are 4.5 years apart. And so when I was in that phase of life, I needed something easy. I needed somebody to hand me something and say, this is the product. This is what you sell. Here's your website. Here's the messaging. Here are the promotions we're doing every month. And it was easy because I didn't have to figure out how to build a website. I didn't have to figure out how to create a brand and market myself because I was basically handed all of that. But then once I was ready, like for my own thing, was ready to kind of learn those skills too. And I did want something that was my own. Like I didn't want to have to send people to somebody else's website and just get a cut of everything. Like I wanted to be able to control how much money I made, which is really hard to do when you're only getting 25% commission off of everything you sell. But it was such a good stepping stone. Like it really did teach me a lot. But I think there's just such a difference. Like they're just really different types of businesses for sure.
Yeah, and I think it can be such a great confidence builder, right? Because if you take somebody who has been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years or is in a corporate job or whatever and is like not familiar with online business, to be like, you need to get on Instagram stories like on video every day and you need to create all this content and blah, 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 blah. It is so intimidating, but that gives you like some training wheels to do that with. So
100%.
My point here is like, don't discount yourself if you're kind of trying to do the MLM side hustle and you're like, this is not as great as I thought. It might just be a stepping stone to something better. Is your brand feeling a little off? Like your visuals, messaging, and your overall vibe just are not lining up with where your business is headed? You probably don't need another pretty logo. You actually need a solid strategy behind your brand. That's exactly what we'll build together inside the Stand Out Brand Strategy session, a one-on-one deep dive into your brand foundation so that you can finally show up with clarity, consistency, and confidence. And if you're thinking about working with Spect & Co. on branding or web design, this is your first step for every single project that we do together. Clients who have gone through this process have tripled their audience size, doubled their revenue, and raised their rates by 30% or more. Use the link in the show notes to book your session, and don't forget to enter code SFBPOD at checkout to save $100.
For sure. And I think they like almost set you up for failure because you see all of these marketing tactics from people that are really high up in all of those companies that are making obscene amount of money. And you think that, oh, that can be me. And I'm not saying it can't, but it waters down the reality of how realistic that is. You know what I mean? And none of them are doing, the asterisk with the income claims, like this is not average. Don't expect this, which now there's a lot more laws around that and people are doing that, as they should. But yeah, it just makes you think, well, they can do it and this person can do it. Why can't I do it? And I'm not saying that you can't, like, absolutely. If that's the motivation to help you do something, then you should do it. But, yeah, there was just so much like unrealistic marketing happening too that I think like gets you feeling kind of trapped and then like feeling like a failure that you couldn't do what everyone else appears to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like, you have to buy into those companies, right? And so then
Yeah.
people are like, I spent money on this. Like, I have to
Yeah.
make it work. And that
Hmm.
can create like some friction also. But that's a great segue into the next topic I want to talk about, which is business and motherhood. Like you mentioned, I think even like when I got an online business in like 2018, it was a very new thing. And whenever I was like, oh, I work with clients all over the world and I find them in Facebook groups, people thought I was making stuff up. Or I would say, oh, I like, work from home and own my own business, and they would assume it was an MLM or whatever. And that was kind of like really one of the only options for somebody who wanted to be a stay-at-home mom to also make like any sort of income. And now the options are limitless. Like there's Upwork, there's work from home corporate jobs, there's online business like we do. And I think that's so great. You talked about how you never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I thought that was so funny because you said, I just like didn't have a lot of examples of that. And I did not either. Both my parents worked like 60 hours a week, and I spent most of my waking hours like with a grandparent or something. And so when I started to like grow up and be thinking about what I wanted my life to look like, I knew that it was important for me to spend more time with my kids than my parents spent with me. But I also attached my value to my productivity and was like, I need to work still. And I could not figure out like how I could do both of those things unless I like waited till I was 40 to have kids, which I didn't want to do. And then I kind of stumbled into online business and was like, oh, this is perfect. But I think there's a lot of talk of people saying, I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And then this was just like extra and not really viewing it from the opposite direction, like kind of you and I have. So I really appreciated that of like, it's fine if your mission in life is not to be a stay-at-home parent, and that like you need to do something like have an online business kind of for yourself to feel like you're contributing or like you have your own thing. And I think you touched on it briefly, but your motherhood story is very unique and interesting. It's like one of the first things I remember ever learning about you. So however much you're comfortable sharing, but will you talk us through how you wound up with 3 kids in 4 years?
I've always wanted to be a mom. That is one thing I've known about myself as a small child. Like, I am the motherly person in every group setting my entire life. I was the friend in the friend group that took care of all the friends, made sure everybody had what they need, any sort of, if I'm out anywhere with anyone, I'm the one making, I'm very like, and this sounds like uppity and I don't mean it to sound that way when I say like I'm servant minded, but I am like, I'm always like serving others. And I've been that way since I was a kid with my siblings. And so like, I just, want to make sure everybody's good. And I've always been that way. And so I've always been kind of motherly since I was a young child, as long as I can remember. So I definitely knew I wanted kids. And I have 3 siblings, and I also have a blended family with, my parents were divorced when I was young. And so I have 3 siblings, 1 full, 2 half. And then I also have 2 step siblings. So like big families, like is what I'm used to. And so I wanted to be a mom, and I knew that. And then also when I was let's see, I think it was 19, I got diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, is what that stands for. It basically just means I got super inconsistent cycles. And so like, it's really hard to ever get pregnant. And so when my husband and I got married in 2012, we knew that it might take a while. So right off the bat, where we weren't preventing, but we weren't like really, really trying. And we did that for a while. And then finally, a year later got pregnant, and then it ended in miscarriage, and which also just like shook my world because I come from a long line of very fertile women. So no one in my family had experienced miscarriage, and like it was just wild because I just wasn't expecting it. I thought the battle would be to get pregnant, not to stay pregnant, And so so that was part of our story in the beginning. We waited about another year and started seeing a specialist and started doing rounds of Clomid, which is like to help you ovulate. So I never did IUI or IVF, but I did do like drugs to help my body do what it's supposed to do. Well, we did that several times, and every time never worked. I showed my body ovulated, pregnancy never happened. So then we were like, well, let's just stop for a while, because if you've ever like struggled with fertility, you probably know that it gets very robotic and it takes the fun out of it when you're like intentionally like tracking your basal body temperature when you wake up and every day, and you're charting like all of these things to figure out when you're going to ovulate, and you're always taking tests, whether it's ovulation tests or pregnancy tests. Like I literally probably have taken 100 pregnancy tests in my life because I was testing every month, but being hopeful, and so nothing ever worked. So then we started talking about adoption. Someone at our church at the time was like, well, why don't you guys just adopt? And I, again, with the growing up with like different examples, I didn't know anyone that was adopted. And then like, I never thought of it as an option. And the only thing I knew about adoption is it's very expensive and that's not going to be realistic. So that's pretty much what I knew. So this friend was like, oh, just adopt. And I'm like, well, yeah, sure, that would be great. But like, we can't afford to adopt. And she's like, well, just ask people for money. Like she basically said it so nonchalant, like, oh, just tell people your story. They'll want to help you. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, just like, tell everyone your story. So then we basically created like a GoFundMe essentially, and saying our story that we wanted to adopt, and our friends and family and people at our church and people that we had known throughout the years, like gave us like $1,000 to help us adopt. And then the job I had at the time, I got like a $5,000 bonus. And so we had like 20. And it was just so it was so encouraging to see like people not be judgmental. Like, cause I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase. Well, if you can't afford to have a baby, if you can't afford to adopt, then you don't deserve to be a parent. It's like, okay, people get pregnant left and right on accident. Like, don't give me that, like people who just become parents don't just have 30 grand sitting in the bank to raise the baby. Like that's just not realistic. So
yeah. And
so
I
it's
think
very,
to that point too, like it took my husband and I like about a year to get pregnant with our first daughter, which I was not expecting. I thought I was going to like try once and have a baby. And I remember towards the end, kind of like you were talking about, it was not as extreme a case as yours by any means, but like, and we've so far not had any miscarriages, thankfully. But I remember getting so frustrated taking my like 100th pregnancy test and being like, I know so many people who are just like getting pregnant left and right, and like they're just not like in a position in their life to be bringing more kids into the world. And I remember being so frustrated of like, I have like a good job and we own our house and we're doing everything right. And like, why is this so hard for me, but it's so easy for other people?
yeah. Yep. Exactly. I felt the exact same way. So, yeah. So basically that's what we kind of just stepped out in faith, hoping that if we were meant to adopt, it would happen. And people wanted to help us. And the agency we used at the time, like they allowed us to do a payment plan because it was 30 grand and we only had 20. And so they were like, just get, once you get placed with someone and like, the adoption happens or whatever, you can like give us what you have and then you can pay monthly installments. So we basically ended up paying off our adoption after we already adopted our daughter, which a lot of agencies will not do. And so that was like definitely like, I feel like it was like a God thing because it just worked out in our favor, and we didn't have the means to do it, and it worked out. But we did have a failed adoption first. So we got set up with this agency. I think it was in the fall of 2014, maybe like summer or fall 2014 is when we started like the home study process and all of that adoption stuff. And then we got matched with someone right away. She lived in a different state. She was due in January, I believe, and she ended up having her at the end of December. And so we went up there, to the hospital, met with the birth mom, which we had met with her a couple times before. And we stayed in the hospital with the baby for 3 days, and then we left and she signed over temporary custody. And then you're not allowed to leave the state for like a couple weeks until it gets approved through Ohio and the other state that was involved. And basically during that time, she changed her mind. So we had to, I say we, it was my husband and my mother-in-law that drove the baby back to the birth mom. And so that was devastating.
I did not know that part of the story, but that sounds
horrible. So for like the next 6 months, we basically, like, because when you adopt, you have to have everything set up for a baby in order to get approved, because you have to do what's called a home study. And so part of the home study is like a fire marshal will come to your house, make sure that like, all you have to basically baby proof, which no one does when they normally have babies, right
No,
before
I
they
did
have
not
a
baby
baby.
proof until my daughter was crawling.
Until she would, right, exactly. So yeah, you have to like put all the little plugs in the sockets. You have to have a fire extinguisher. You have to have a room set up for a baby, all these things. So we basically ignored the baby room for the next, 5 months. And I was definitely in a situation where I call situational depression. Like I did get out of it, but it was just like, I was just like, I give up. Like,
Yeah.
you
Well, because
know,
now the like rug's been pulled out from under you twice.
yes, exactly. And so then several months go by, and then the agency called us in April of 2025, and they were like, we have another birth mom. She wants to meet with you. She's due at the beginning of June, and she lives in Columbus. And so it was local to us this time, and we didn't have to deal with the different states. And so we were like, okay, like let's meet with her, see how it goes. And she, picked us. Basically, I don't know if you know how adoption works, but basically the birth parents are the ones in control until the baby is born. So like they pick you based on like things you tell them about yourselves. We had like a bio and like, on the agency's like website and stuff, add our pictures and our story and all of that stuff. So they're usually looking for specific criteria. And then
You might laugh at this, but probably not. But everything that I know about adoption, I learned from watching Teen Mom when I was in high school. And from like talking with you, obviously. And I thought it was the wildest thing that like the birth parent gets to choose. I thought it was like a matchmaking situation where the agency would be like, okay, we have like these three people who we think would be good fits for you. I did not know that it was literally like, here's a book, choose one.
essentially, yeah. And I think a lot of it has gone more online now, but yeah, they basically like you get kind of narrowed down based on what they're looking for, and then they, get to choose. But yeah, so we met with her, and then she just decided she wanted to move forward. And then she had Ellie, which is our daughter, on May 28th, 2015. And originally she said she didn't want me in the room, and she changed her mind like last minute when she was in labor. She said I could be in there with her. So I got to be in there as Ellie was born, which was amazing. And then I stayed with her in the hospital for 2 days, because what happened with the previous time, it was a different state. So like that hospital gave us our own room. So like we took care of the baby separately from the birth mom. This scenario, we lived in Columbus. So they're like, no, we're not like going, bending over backwards to accommodate you. You're not our patient. So my husband went home and I stayed with her, because in the back of my mind, I was very afraid that she was going to change her mind. And I mean, that's not why I stayed, but I had that fear for sure. And I wanted to do everything that was in my power to be with her as much as possible with the baby. And my perspective of this is that I think it was really helpful for her to see kind of like how I would parent Ellie. And it was really special bonding for us to like get to know each other a little bit more, because we really only had met like 2 times at this point. So we got to learn more about each other, and we have an open adoption with her. And Ellie is almost 10 now. She'll be 10 at the end of this month, and which is wild to think. We like love having an open adoption, which a lot of people, that terrifies people. That's always the biggest questions I get about adoption are always, when did you get her? When did you adopt her? When did you get her? And do you have an open adoption? And so there's no laws on open adoption. It's very much a relationship. And so you have to have communication, and you get to, before the baby is born, everything is up to the birth mom because they have custody. After the baby is born and after the custody has been switched over, essentially, then now the adoptive parents have full legal rights. And so it kind of shifts. So I think that there's a lot of people that would adopt and kind of like stop being in connection with the biological parents because they can. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I think that does happen. And, I just see it as their extended family, just like my aunts and uncles, and she's been calling herself aunt to Ellie recently, which I love, and like in person when we see them and stuff. And we just invite them over to hang out at our house for all of our kids' birthday parties and hangs. And her older two are like much older than Ellie. You know, they're like now 22 and like 18. And so they were like 11 and 8 when she was born. But anyways, so yeah, sorry, I told you this cannot be a short story. So this is 2016, no, 15. She's 3 months old, and my brother and his 1-year-old moved in with us because they were going through some stuff. So he moves in with us in our house, and we only had a 3-bedroom house, and we had just adopted Ellie. And then like 3 months later, he was at my house, and I had just like peed on a stick. Literally, I'd opened an Angry Orchard, and took a pregnancy test because I was just kind of felt weird, and I took them all the time because I'm like, maybe I'm pregnant, you know, all the time. And it was positive. So I like told my brother because he was home and my husband wasn't even home. And I'm like, hey, like I left something on the counter for you in the bathroom. And he like looks at it and he was like, well, I guess that gives me my move out date. Yes, exactly. And so it was just like so crazy because we just went from like just me and my husband to then adopting and then 2 more people living in our house and then being pregnant. And so it was just crazy. We just went from 0 to like 100, it felt like, which is why when people always ask, was it harder to go from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3? Honestly, like my 1 to 1 was so like severe that 2 to 3 was like nothing. And like, it was like no big deal. Right. Like, yeah, because in my pregnancy, like when I was pregnant with Phoenix, a lot of people during their first pregnancy, they have a lot of like chill time and nesting time. And like I had an infant. Like I didn't have that experience at all.
My first pregnancy is like some of my best memories of my life. And I knew that like, I knew I wanted multiple kids, and I knew that that was going to be my only opportunity to like really, truly enjoy my pregnancy. And I was lucky that it was very easy. But yeah, I took so many naps, and I like went and got massages and like watched a ton of I mean, I worked also. Like I wasn't just being a potato, but sure to like get the full experience because I knew, okay, when I do this next time, I'm going to be like chasing around a toddler and just exhausted all the time. And I was right.
Exactly. Yep. And yeah, so like the good thing about it is like both times that, you know, when I had my boys, like that I was pregnant, I was so busy that like the pregnancy went by so fast because I was momming already, you know? And so many people were like, when I announced I was pregnant, I told you that would happen after you adopted. Literally, people came out the woodworks to tell us that, you know? But I just think, you know, it's just such a crazy story. And looking back, I'm like, I forget sometimes because it was so long ago that like not everybody, one, knows that our story. And two, like it sometimes doesn't even feel real. Like a lot of the really raw moments that like were so hard then, now I'm like, okay, if that didn't happen though, we wouldn't have adopted. And if we didn't adopt, we wouldn't have our daughter. And it was just all like, it was so hard to go through because it felt like the worst, like the failed adoption felt, well, first my miscarriage felt like my life was over. Mm-hmm. And then the failed adoption felt like my life was over. And so I'm like, it just was like all of these like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. And then now looking back, I'm like, it was all lining up exactly how it was supposed to. I just didn't know it yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think there's so many like motherhood lessons that we can apply to business. And I think that I've heard it said before of like, you've survived 100% of the worst days of your life. And I think that's a great thing. It's hard to remind ourselves of in the moment, but I think it's a good thing to remember. And I would imagine that the resilience that you learned from all of that has been huge in your business, because there's so many times when a client gets pissed off at you, or you like lose money one month, or I mean, I could go on and on with examples where you're like, I made the worst decision by starting this business. My life is over. I'm a failure. Like it can't get worse than this.
Yeah.
And you get through it. And I think
Yep.
having all that happen before you started business, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, made like, for one, you learned a lot of resilience. And for two, gave you some good perspective of like, no matter how bad things get in my business, like it's fine.
100%. Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, I had a little bit of I don't know, I would say a rough childhood. So I had a lot of that adversity that I've had to face my entire life. And so I've always like had to figure it out and just keep going type of personality. So I definitely think that helped for sure. But yeah, I, think that no matter what has happened to me or, like against me, it's been, like really good learning lessons and it's just shaped who I am as a person and my character. And I wouldn't be who I am without what I've been through. So I'm sorry that we turned this whole episode into my motherhood story.
No, no, we're bringing it back around, and I think like this won't obviously resonate with everyone, but I think there's a lot of people that it really will. We, at least you and I, and lots of like my friends that are in business also, like, we're in business because we love what we do as far as business. Like I love branding, I love graphic design, like I could do it all day long.
Yeah.
But really, why I'm in business is to like support my life and my family, and motherhood is a huge, huge part of that. So it's all related for sure. So, what do you think is different about the way you approach work from before you had kids and you were like doing the corporate thing to after you had kids?
So before I had kids, I told you I've always worked like for as long as I can remember, and I've always been the person who struggles with tying like my worth and my value in what I do. And so I've always been the person who is very reliable. You can count on me and I will be there. You need something, I got it. Like if I need to be at work from 6 to 6, cool. I did that a lot before I had kids, and I was often the first person in the morning and the last person to leave because I felt like anything that needed to be done was a priority and needed to be done like right then. And I didn't like to have like things spill over to other days or like to do lists to be like really long and like take over. I just wanted to get it done. I was there. I felt like I can just stay longer. It's fine. I would definitely say that my work life was my priority. And becoming a mom and doing that first for a while and then getting back into business, I went into this business with a different perspective for sure. It was kind of just like you were saying, like I'm not like living to work. I'm working to support my life, and my life and my children, my family is the priority. And if I can't work around like their schedules and have that flexibility and freedom to do things with them and for them, then it's not worth it to me. And I did not have that perspective before becoming a parent. I definitely felt like climbing the corporate ladder was like what I was going to do. And that was the most important thing to me because I also didn't come from money. And so I knew that I needed money to survive, and I wanted to earn enough to help me feel safe and that I would be provided for. And so, and then I married someone who's like, it's just money, we'll make more. And I'm like, what? So that really helps like kind of balance me out a little bit and like chill out because it's true, like it is just money. That's really hard for someone to learn that has a scarcity mindset around money because there was never enough growing up. And so that's something I'm still trying to learn, but have definitely gotten a lot better with over the years. But yeah, this week I'm going to go to my kids' career fair at school and like present about my business. And this is the third year in a row that I've gotten to do that. And I'm really excited. And it's things like that, like and chaperoning field trips and like being home with them to get them to and from school and being here when they're like after school. And like I was alone a lot. Well, I had siblings, but I didn't have a lot of supervision as a kid because both my parents worked, and being that for them is what is important to me. And my business like allows that and supports that. But if it like, I just know now how possible it is to earn a living on my own, that like a 9 to 5 just seems so unrealistic. I'm like,
Kind of feels like a waste of time, right?
yes, I'm like, I would never go back. I mean, obviously, if I had to, I would do what I had to do. But if I have my choice, like, I'm like, no way. It's not worth the trade-off of the time. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's bring it back around to social media a little bit and like branding and stuff. So I thoroughly enjoy following you on Instagram, first and foremost, because I think your branding is just like killer.
Thank you.
But I think you also have a really unique perspective on it, like how a lot of social media managers are like, post more, do more. not go by followers, but like it's all about like growing followers and just like more, 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 more. And I don't think you approach it that way. And I mean, you even from what I can tell, like you're not posting every day. You show up on stories most days, but like it looks like you post like maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and it's not like a super big lift. So can you talk us through like how a social media strategy can fit into our marketing of like a business that we're trying to grow to 6 figures without it being all consuming for somebody who has other things like families going on in their life?
Yes, for sure. So I think that, well, first off, I'm a pretty organized person by nature. I've always been pretty organized. I love a good system. I like structure. And so I get that, like, what I'm about to say might not be realistic for everyone. But for me, what helps me in my business and what I do for my clients is like batching content ahead of time. Like, I'm not saying that everything has to be done ahead of time, but knowing that, like, even if you do it like 1 week at a time, if you think of like this week, what I'm going to post about this for the next week, and you plan it all out, I just use like a Google sheet. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, and you map it all out and you create the content and you schedule it out so that when it's actually going live, the next week, you will be on client calls. You'll be working on, projects for clients. You'll be running errands, hanging out with your kids, doing whatever. And as you're doing those things and living your life, your content is being posted. Like, you don't have to think about it in the moment because you planned ahead. And so I get that not everybody's a planner, and so that's fine. Taking that aside, that is, I think, the easiest way to kind of be consistent without it taking over your life is like thinking ahead and just planning ahead. So practically that looks like, if you're scrolling and you see something you like save it in an Instagram folder. Like, I have folders saved for my own business and like each client. So when I'm scrolling and I see something that I think would work for my business or someone else's, a client's, I'll save it into an Instagram folder. And then when I'm working on like planning out content, I'll go to that folder and like paste things into this Google sheet that I use. And that way I'm never starting from scratch because I always have a list of ideas somewhere. I also always have my own previous content that you can look at analytics and see what performed well, what can you like replicate or even post again. Like, actually, I posted a reel today that I posted originally in like February. And I realized I hadn't been promoting this freebie that I have for a long time. And I'm like, I'm just going to repost this same reel. I did redo the cover photo, but like, it's exactly the same. I didn't change the caption. I didn't change the reel because I don't need to. Like, it's doing what I need it to do. Why reinvent the wheel and make my life harder if I already have content that I, used before that I could repurpose? So I think just like making your life easier by realizing, one, it's okay to be repetitive. People need to hear the same message over and over again. Two, it's okay to repurpose content. No one ever has come to me or commented or DM me and said, I can't believe you posted that again. I saw it 3 months ago. Nobody cares. Nobody even notices. No, you're not that important. And I know that that sounds mean, but nobody is living their life and like scrolling on Instagram and thinking about you as much as you are thinking about you. No one knows. And there's so much content nowadays that our attention spans are like 0.5 seconds. Like, they're not going to remember it, even if they did see it, which the odds of every follower seeing every piece of content that you share alone is so low that it's like the odds of that they actually did see it the first time is pretty low. But even if they did, they're not going to remember. So just like, stop stressing, stop making your life so hard, But yeah. So anyways, so that kind of is what I would say. It's like, don't stress over it. But as far as quantity, I think it does depend on like the industry you're in, and there are some things, but yeah, I think if you're a service provider, you really don't need to be posting more than 3 times a week. If you do want to massively grow your account, yes, posting more will help. Like, a frequency in posting really good content will help for sure. But you can have a really successful business with a small follower account. And I think that people finally are realizing that in the last few years on social media. And for me, typically I post usually 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll do a fourth occasionally, but for the most part, it's around 3 times a week on my grid. And then I'm on my stories Monday through Friday, every day. Usually I do not post on the weekends. I did post a reel on Mother's Day because it was a Sunday, and I did that narrator trend, and it was perfect for Mother's Day because I was talking about like my journey from motherhood into entrepreneurship. Occasionally I do. Again, there are no rules. Like you can do whatever you want, but I would say like placing some kind of like safeguards or like boundaries up for yourself to help you like not go overboard or get burnout like is helpful. And for me, like not posting stories on the weekend, giving myself that reset, which I've been doing probably for about a year or two now, it's been really helpful because when I was in the direct sales world before this business, it was very opposite because my business now, I'm a B2B business, so I target other business owners. Whereas in direct sales, you're a business to consumer business and you're targeting people that don't have businesses. So when are they on social media? After work and on the weekends. And so I had this massive like shift from going from that business to this business and realizing that like I didn't need to post at night and on weekends and I didn't need to be on the weekend. And it was like a huge weight lifted because that was so hard for me to like keep up with business when I was supposed to be having family time. And now I can have this like better boundaries with like, my clients aren't expecting me to respond to a DM or an email at 8 o'clock on a weekday. Like they're just not. And so it kind of made it easier to really stick to my own boundaries and help me be more intentional at home because I didn't feel like I needed to be glued to my phone. And I don't think that you asked that, but hopefully that was helpful. I kind of went on a tangent
That is
there.
really helpful. Yeah. And I work with, and people who listen to this podcast are service providers in both B2B and B2C, but I feel strongly that B2B is easier, to be honest. And I mean, that just depends. If you're like a mental health therapist, like you're not going to be a B2B business and that's fine. But I think that is one of the things that we don't talk about enough of like being the pros of being a B2B business, right? Your clients are other business owners. They understand the value of investing in their business. They have kind of those same boundaries that you do of like, I'm at this season of life, I probably am working on a Saturday, but I'm definitely not communicating with clients on a Saturday.
Right. And I agree with you. I've definitely stayed up late and worked, or I work early in the mornings, but I try to, if I have to send something to a client because they want to get it off my list, I'll schedule the message for 9 a.m. during a weekday. Because even though I'm working around my life, I don't want to give the expectation to them that I'm going to answer emails on the weekend or Slack messages or whatever. And I also don't want to make them feel like pressured to respond because I messaged them on the weekend,
Yeah.
So
Megan's working at 5 a.m., so I should be too.
Exactly. No. And it's like, that's just because that's like in this phase of life, like I like to get up early so I can have time before my kids wake up to do some stuff for me. And that's just what works for me. But I am not a night owl. I cannot stay up. Like, when my brain shuts down after like 7 p.m., I'm telling you, it takes me like 3 times longer to do the same thing at night that I could do in the morning, like so much better.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, but can you walk us through how to know if you're ready to hire a social media manager? Because it's an investment for sure. And like, I don't necessarily think that you should hire an Instagram manager like the first week that you start your business. So at what point does that kind of make sense?
Basically, there are a couple different like things I would say would be like criteria prerequisites that you should like hit before you even look for a social media manager. The big thing is like, you have to have a proven offer. If you haven't like sold the service or product yourself already, you're not ready for a social media manager. Throwing money at it is not going to fix the problem. So that's the first thing. And second thing is that before you invest in social media, you should have already worked with a brand designer. I believe this wholeheartedly. I know that not everyone's going to say that, but in order to create really good content, I need a client who has worked with a brand designer, has a website, gets consistent professional photography. If those aren't happening, the odds of me getting what I need from them and turning it into something really good is going to be really hard. Like I definitely, create reels for people and I will give them a script and tell them what to record for videos and stuff like that. But you still need professional photos. Like you definitely you look more professional when you have professional photos. Same thing that you probably tell people for their website. It's like you stand out when it's you, but really good quality. And when you use stock photos that everybody else is using, it looks stocky. It's obvious. Like anybody that gets on the internet these days can tell the difference. And so, yeah, I would say those things. And then also has a budget for social media. So if you're like thinking it's going to be the savior of your business and you can only afford like 1 or 2 months and you're just hoping that's going to like be the thing that tips you over into a profit, it's not going to. And that you cannot put that much pressure on one person and one area of marketing to save your business. Like social media management is just like one piece of the pie. There's so many other things that go into it. And hiring a social media manager does not take the responsibility of sales off of the business owner. And I think some people think that it does. And then the last thing I would say is that you have a realistic idea of organic social media marketing, meaning you do not think that you're going to hire someone and in a week or 5 days or tomorrow even, they're going to make you go viral and you're just going to be mega successful, because that's not realistic. Organic growth for business accounts is very slow. And so you have to be in it for the long haul, and you have to really trust that do your homework, hire someone that you know knows what they're doing, and you can do that pretty easily by asking for a portfolio, looking at their website, looking at how they show up on social media would be some ideas. And then also get on a sales call with them, ask them questions, and do the homework. Hire someone that you think knows what they're doing and can prove that they have given results for other clients. And then you're going to be fine, but you have to trust them, and you have to like let them. Another thing that's really, really helpful is to like know that when you hire a specialist, social media management is a specialty, you're hiring someone that's going to steer the ship. If you want to hire someone, but you want to tell them exactly what to do and you like question their every move, you're not really going to allow them to implement the strategy they wanted, and you're probably not going to see the success you want because you're getting in the way of that. So just like those 10 things or whatever I said, I'm sorry. That was a really long list.
Yeah, no, that was great. We've talked about this on every guest interview that I've done so far when we talk about like how to know if you're ready to hire this person. So I'm going to remind people again, like it is okay and encouraged to ask somebody, what results have you gotten for other clients? And I feel like people like get weird about that, but like it's fine. And in your case, it's very easy to be like, here are the analytics before and here are the analytics after.
Yeah.
In my case is maybe not quite so tangible for brand design, so it gets trickier, but like please, please, please ask those questions. Don't just hire somebody based off of vibes and then be disappointed when it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I agree. And I think vibe is important for sure. Like you can tell on a sales call if it's going to be a good fit or not, personality wise, definitely important. But yeah, it's not the only thing that's important for sure.
Yep. And I think that you also made a good point of like realistic expectations and knowing that like, do you need to take a break? Okay. Of having like realistic expectations and understanding that like, you're not going to hire a social media manager and then like make a sale next week. And I had to kind of get real with myself about this, not with hiring a social media manager, but just of like, what am I really using my Instagram for and what results am I hoping to get? And I made a post, by the time this episode comes out, it will be like a few months ago, about like, I'm quitting Instagram. And it wasn't really like,
I think
I'm quitting
I saw
Instagram,
that.
but
yeah,
I understand now after almost 10 years in business that like the idea that a client is going to stumble across me on Instagram and just book $1,000 branding package is insane. Like that might happen once or twice in my career, but that's not a realistic expectation. And so rather than relying on my Instagram for sales, I've kind of reframed the way I create content to be more of like a nurture platform of like, probably these people are going to find me other places, networking, guest speaking things I do, podcasts I'm on, whatever. And then they're going to follow me on Instagram, and that's where they can like get to know me and I can establish my expertise. And then hopefully over time that will like prime them to be more likely to reach out to me when they are ready for this service. And just shifting that in my head has like made content creation feel so much less like a pain in my butt, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a great perspective. Yeah, I think that's really good because so many people say that, like, well, I don't get my clients from Instagram. And it's like, okay, and I get that. And sometimes, depending on who you're targeting, maybe it's not the platform to put all of your marketing eggs in that basket, and that's fine. Go where your people are. But if you are targeting anyone that is between the ages of 20 and 40, and they find out about you, where do you think they're going to look you up? They're going to look you up on Instagram. So even if you're not like consistently marketing there all the time and pumping out fresh content, it still should be like optimized for conversion, meaning like someone who finds you should be able to binge a bunch of content that you already have there through your stories and pinned posts and, you know, whenever you posted last, to see if they can feel like they like you, want to learn more, and learn more about how to work with you. Because even if they don't want to work with you right then, it's helpful for when they're ready. And you have to be able to easily talk yourself as a person through all of those steps of like finding someone, binging their content, and taking action and being able to do that easily. And so if your profile isn't set up for someone to basically pre-qualify themselves and find your contact form and inquire if they wanted to, then you're going to lose leads because someone else is showing up better in a more optimized way on their profile on Instagram, even if they're not showing up as consistently. You know, if they're making it easy for people to contact them through their profile on Instagram and through their content, then that person's going to get that client over you, you know? So, I mean, yeah, you definitely don't have to post all the time. Like, that's not realistic, but your profile should be like intriguing enough for your ideal client, and they should be able to get an idea of your personality and what it's like to work with you and be able to take action if they want to.
Yeah. And to give a real life example of this, I have a client who I did branding and website for. She kind of took a little bit of a break from business and it's like coming back, wants to redo everything. And her clients are creative business owners, primarily designers and copywriters. So they are on Instagram, right? And she's like, there's nothing I hate more than scrolling on Instagram. Like, she does not want to be on there. And so I kind of had to have the conversation with her of like, I get it, but people are going to look for you there. And so our solution was to create a really, really nice, both visually and like with good captions and like strategically kind of formatted 9 grid. And so I think she logs into her Instagram like once a month to like check if there's messages. And she just has in her bio, like, hey, I hang out on LinkedIn, follow me there. But at least when somebody searches her, because they will, there's something for them to find and they can be like, okay, she's a legit business owner. She looks like she like has her stuff together.
And
I'll
if I
go to
want to
this
know
place to
more,
learn more.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's crucial because so many people will just not post ever and just not update it. And then what you don't want to happen is someone to find you and think maybe they went out of business because,
I've done that recently because
yeah,
somebody's last post was like 2022 or something. And for all I know, maybe they are still on stories all the time. And I just caught them on a day when there wasn't anything, but I just moved right. Like, I'm not going to keep checking back. I'm just going to move on.
right, right. You're going to go to your next person on your list of contacts that you know is in business that you talk to
Exactly.
regularly. Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was a great chat. Thanks for being such an open book with us about both business and your kind of motherhood journey and how all of that plays together. I think was super interesting and it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So I really appreciate it. Before we close out, can you tell us how we can stay in contact with you? Obviously, Instagram, and also like what our options are if we would like to work with you.
Yeah, so Instagram, I am at meganphillips.co, and my website is also meganphillips.co. So easy to find. And yeah, so my bread and butter service is social media management. So that is a more, bigger investment because it is a retainer model, start to finish, helping you come up with ideas and implementing those ideas and making your graphics and your captions and your reels and scheduling everything out and monitoring your account and all of that stuff. So that's really a true partnership and that is a larger investment. However, if you're not ready for that, that's okay. Then I have an Instagram audit, which is a great place to start because then I go in and I look at your account, give you all of the pointers to how to optimize it, just like you and I were just talking about, so that when someone does land on your page, they know exactly what you do, who you serve, how to work with you, and I will then also go through and give you ideas for content and content pillars and things of that nature as well as like, look up competitors in your industry and show you how they're showing up and maybe see where there's a gap of how you could show up differently. So that's a great place to start for someone who's not ready to outsource, but they are like, I still need help with Instagram. Like, I have no idea how to show up on here. And then I love doing in-person content creation too for anyone in Columbus, Ohio. I'm dabbling in that as well this year to help them show up with Reels. And it's, a one-time commitment. So it's not a retainer either.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. All of Megan's links will be in the show notes. And I would highly, highly encourage you to connect with her, even if you're not like ready to hire somebody. I think she gives a lot of really good actionable tips that you can implement yourself. So
yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Morgan.
Thanks for tuning in to the Six Figure Brand Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to rate the show and leave a review on whatever app you're listening on. And as a thank you, I'll send you coffee on me. Yes, I'm serious. As a smaller show for now, you taking the time to do this makes a huge impact on how we can reach more people and how I can continue to create this content for free. When you take a screenshot of your review, follow and tag me on Instagram at @SpectandCo. I'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. As always, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources I mentioned during the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.